What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy Hayru Haynes. It's December 29th, 2019. It's a Sunday, and I'm feeling great. I wanted to give thanks to the Most High for waking me up this morning and being able to receive and to give out information that hopefully helps us to see exactly what we need to do, or at least to put us, to steer us in the right direction. That's what I hope I'm able to give people, is at least enough insight in order to do that. So with that being said, like I said, I wanted to give thanks to the Most High for that, and to give thanks to the Most High for also allowing the hearts and minds of brothers and sisters locally, nationally, globally to open up and to be receptive to this message. That's extremely important, because you need that. If you don't have a foundation, you'll be hard pressed to think that you can build anything. So I'm definitely appreciative of that, and as well as Brother Lance Scurv. You can see my son's got a cold that he's trying to get over. So, and that's one of the reasons why I said I've been busy, and the mother of my child too as well. She's been feeling under the weather too. She's been a little bit under the weather, so to say the least, I put that lightly. So it's been a little bit more serious than that. But nothing that I don't think that the human body, the human mind, could not tackle or couldn't conquer with a little bit of aggression and industriousness in terms of your attitude. So with all that being said, I wanted to kind of just get that out the way, because that's important, and that's what should come first, your appreciation. And so I said all that to say this, that, as you can tell from the title, I'm fed up with the conscious community, man. Tired of these hotep hustlers hustling this snake oil and, acting as luminaries, but really are, like we said, wolf in sheep's clothing, for lack of a better term. So, I end up watching a video with Dr. Leslie Muhammad, and I hate to call him doctor. I wish the doctor was not an abbreviation, but more like an acronym, because it stands for definitely retarded. This nigga is definitely retarded for trying to get us carbon-based beings to think that milk is the liquid sun, when we've already substantiated through the first and second lectures, through their science, that the primary responsibility of skin and blood is to synthesize light. And since we've already, proven that we are people of light, then it only makes sense for us to eat plants until we garner enough information or enough experience to, exit them out of the equation. So that we then in turn are just like them, achieving the highest level of this life experience by being able to turn the sun's direct energy into usable energy. And that's what we want to do. The plants do that. They turn from the sun's energy, they create their amino acids, and in turn the animals eat the plants, then man eats the animals. So we don't want to still, like we said, incorporate vestiges or the intellectual debris that comes from these false concepts back into our meal, back into our spiritual daily meals. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that, and that's what I think that they're doing. Because there's the video that I watched. I guess a guy by the name of Dr. Inky was exposing him, and he went off into talking about the importance really didn't lie so much on the lactose being a sugar, which I told you that is extremely important too, because the blood only uses glucose. Okay, the brain prefers to use glucose too as well, but it can operate off of different sugars, but it prefers to use glucose, okay, which is a simple sugar. Lactose and galactose, all these other sugars are complex sugars. Some of them are simple, but they're a lot more complex than glucose, okay, so the body has to break them down, then rearrange them into the molecular formula that is suitable for the energy that can then turn into ATP. And that is adenosine triphosphate. Okay, so with that being said, we understand that glucose is the energy that we run off of. You don't burn protein. Okay, and so even if he had talked about protein being, the foreign proteins being a big problem, the issue would be protein in and of itself. Do you need as much protein as they claim that you do? We understand it's the building blocks, but those building blocks are extremely important in the formative years of life, as well, because those proteins usually contain a growth hormone, and that's why they say that the cow's milk is suitable for human consumption, because of that hormone that they claim is identical to the one found in female's milk and a woman's milk, breast milk. Okay, and that is IGF, which is the insulin growth factor. Okay, and that's what speed, and these growth factors, like we said and we talked about, is the difference between winning and losing in that account, because then there's a structures alongside those growth factors, okay, that tell that calf to turn into a 200, 300 pound cow, that allows that calf to come out walking. okay, and sustain itself. All right, and we know that we progress, at a much slower level than that. Our babies don't come out walking out the womb. All right. All right. So there's going to be some complications because there's going to be some mixed up signals, because that's what hormones are. Hormones are technically called chemical messengers. So that's what we find wrong with that. And I think, like I said, what upsets me is that, as people who claim to be conscious and people who claim to be researchers and people who claim to be well versed in, many bodies of knowledge, these things, go over their head. They're failing to realize that the earth communicates, or that the people who rule the earth communicate through signs and symbols. All right, we must know that. And so when he talks about the efficacy of milk, and we know otherwise, we know that that puts us further down the food chain. We should be we should turn ahead to that, or turn turn on that information. We should feel incensed about it. I really do, and I'm trying to gather the thoughts to where I don't use words that feel as if I'm hating or something. I'm just I'm tired of it. I really am. So we're gonna go a little bit deeper. Like I said, this video wouldn't be long, but I'm pretty sure you should enjoy it. Now, Janice Stanger, which is she has a PhD, and she talks about this. She goes, the title of the video is actually "The Dangerous Truth About Proteins." So if you want to go on YouTube and check that video out, I recommend that you do. Her delivery is kind of bland, but the information is powerful. It's rock solid. Like I said, I don't agree with everything everybody says, because there's other things that you have to take into account. I never subscribe or submit to someone's philosophy wholeheartedly. I mean, we have to know that. We have to understand that too as well. You have to take your own lead, or take the lead in your own existence, while simultaneously complementing the existence of others. That's what your life mission is. And you'll find a way to do that, trust me, but you have to have the right information. So this is where we're at. And so in that lecture, she just talks about what protein is made up of, some of the things that I've told you already, and the purposes of protein, and obviously what excess protein, the dangers of excess protein can do to the body. Now, so that just goes to show you that the deception is multi-layered, if you will. It just doesn't go about talking about what's essential, or what milk is essentially providing for the human body, in terms of the sugars, or in terms of the fats, or in terms of the vitamin D. We look at those things, and they're able to isolate what we think is good for us, or what they claim is good for us, as it's passed down the line, if you will, in terms of energy production. And they tell us that because we need these things and it comes from this source, we must have this source. Not to mention, like we said, subliminally, what they are saying to you, even though this is not true, is that there is really no other source than this source. And if there is other sources, this is the gold standard. And that's very dangerous, because, like I said, if the brother had taken into consideration that we're light beings, and that like we went over, and I have to continue to keep reiterating this because this is important. You have to get this ingrained in your psyche, is that the melanin absorbs 99.9% of the UV rays, but because we have the thinking of the European that, we are being protected, this melanin protects us from the sun, not absorbing it. That's a big difference. That's huge. Those subtle play on words is what we have to understand. Is huge. You see, so when you tell me, or when I have the understanding that it's absorbing it, that it is working with these chemicals that come and are translated from light, that we use, or we turn into chemicals, but are translated from light, then that's more powerful to me. That's more powerful to me. Because then if you say that this skin is in turn used to just protect me, then I just see it as, it's just skin. It's just, it protects me as I go out in the sun, and nothing more, nothing less. That's the furthest thing from the truth. You see what I'm saying? So then you talk about, that's why you have to dig deeper. Like, I could throw just a simple concept out there. Like, when they talk about McDonald's, we're not going to go off into a lot of big conspiracy buffs, talk about how the McDonald brothers are from San Bernardino, and San Bernardino might be a hub of the Illuminati and secret organizations. With that being said, I take a look at, sometimes the reason why it's so easy for people to feed into that sort of thinking is because when you go deeper, you can only pay attention to the evidence. So when you know that McDonald's is like the name from a Scottish clan, okay, and the Scottish clans used to speak a language, or still speak a language to this day. I don't know if it's a dead language, or it's what's called what they refer to as liturgical language, which means that it can be used in religious rites and things like that, like Latin is. Okay, so the thing is that regardless of what it is, the name McDonald translates from the Gaelic language as world ruler. Okay, that's what the name means. So when you see, mind you, we talked about how they communicate in signs and symbols. When you see somebody like Donald Trump posing with some Big Macs, this man over 7 years old, you think he eat highly processed food like Big Macs to stay that age? Come on now. You know that they don't. You know, so it's a show. You know, so what is he showing you? When he's showing you that symbol, what is he saying? World ruler. We're close to world rule. We're close. We're getting close. They do it through subtleties and they do it overtly, but you have to pay attention to both in order to understand or get the full message, is what I'm saying. So, you know, when we talk about doing your research, a lot of times even in the name, the name has a lot to do because they take a lot of pride in naming things. You have to understand that. We talked about that in the first lecture and the second lecture about the periodic table of elements. And, you know, we talked about how just because you can name something does not mean you know what it is. And just because you can use it does not mean you know how it works. Go visit those those two lectures if you need to be brought up to speed to this conceptual framework that we're working with here on the FOF squad. Mind you, that's FOF squad, Facts Over Feelings. That's what's getting started here. We coming for the throat. We kicking niggas like Dr. Wesley Muhammad in the head with boots on. Inside of bigger boots, okay? So now this is, when I move on, I'm like, okay, how do we go even further? How do we get a clearer understanding of who we're being ruled by and why these brothers need to be doing even more work before they even present this information here? Okay, because we talked about earlier, and I don't know if I touched on it deeply, but we talked about how they had animal courts. All right, all the way up until the 18th century. They had these animal courts where they put animals on the same moral standard. They achieve the same moral standard as human beings. This is incredible. So like we said, what we're saying, and I hate to keep repeating some of these things if I went over this information already, but I think that it's crucial. We have to, internalize this information and so that it's real to you. That's the only way you're going to act off of it. Okay, so they had these animal courts, started over in the 800s and all the way up to the 18th century. They allowed animals to be represented in court. So what does that tell you? Now, if it was going on for that long, and then around so-called, they said the 16th or 17th century, they start snatching your ass up from Africa and throwing you in chains and treating you like you were less than that, treating you like animals, that's a falsehood. Even if they were actually picking you up in ships, they were treating you worse than animals. Because animals got an opportunity to be, to be represented in court. Your ass was shackled and tried and hanged all in one. So they get rid of this idea that they were treating you like animals. Even animals had their day in court. That's where this term kangaroo court comes from. I have to keep saying these things over again because I need you to understand it. Okay? So they treated animals better than you. That's why you can go to an instance where Mike Vick was hung and we was like, man, it seemed like these white folks like dogs more than they like human beings. Over dogs? Yes, over dogs who were considered their equals at one point in time. This is how, see, the way that humans do things, we have to, that's called a culture. A culture is not just, it doesn't exist in an epoch or an era. It is passed down. That's what you need to know. So when they talk about Western culture, it's not just the way they do things because they doing it, it's because that's how they always did things. Point. Let me break this down. Let me show you a point. Now, we're gonna go off into giving you some quotes. Hold on, Daddy boy. Hold on, give Daddy 1 second. He almost done. Daddy was getting hyped up right quick because he's about to drop a jewel. He's still about to drop a jewel. Okay. Now, I want to give you some quotes, or not some quotes, but some information that you can look up and you can check these sources. Excuse me, right? He wants something out the refrigerator. I got this mini fridge in this room, but it's holding up the phone. Come on, Daddy boy, you all right? Hold on. Just chill out for Daddy right quick. I know you're sick and you're hungry and you want to eat and stuff. Okay. Let Daddy get through with this and I'll be just 1 second. Okay. One is on July 1st, 2013, the Daily Mail reported that bestiality brothels were spreading quickly through Germany, and that, they're also called erotic zoos. And Vice News, which is a global news channel, 2014, quote unquote, said bestiality is having a weird renaissance in Europe. Okay, a 2015 Jerusalem Post article indicates, quote unquote, Copenhagen has long been the bestiality capital of Europe. All right. In 2014, according to a Danish journalist, her name was Margit Schabenzohen. I hope I'm not, crucifying that last name. But she, the quote was, a Danish man who ran a business catering to people who have sex with horses said that he had buses of people arriving at his business. Buses. Okay? Now, you want more? Now, the thing is, people don't know. Like I said, remember the history that I talked about. The Romans used to use dogs in warfare, all right, when they were fighting against the Gauls, all right? And when the dogs did not alert them to the presence of the Gauls, the dogs could be tried in court or banished or executed. Mind you, held them to the same moral standard. That's what you have to understand. So the problems, or where they say the states where it's problematic, and mind you, when you do your research about this, they will also associate this country, which is the country of Europe, with being more, atheistic. With, where there's, it seems as if they're, well, it ain't. It doesn't seem. It is that there's less spirituality. Obviously, there's this notion of God just does not exist. All right, these are the people that you're dealing with. This is the prevalent mindset amongst people who feel like animals have the same standard or should be held to the same standard as human beings. But we know that that's a falsehood, because what they're doing low key is trying to get you to understand where they lean more towards. Because if that was the case, then that would apply. You already knew about it, is what I'm saying. There was not this linear progression as most people like to make it out to be, is what I'm saying, or what I said before. In the 1960s, like we said, if we use that as a reference point, and they say, well, okay, look how the social temperature is now in comparison to how it was back then. We've progressed. We've made progress. No, we have not, because it already showed you that the white man Ben knew what he was doing. He already told you, I'll let animals go to court and decide whether or not, or have the ability to be able to figure out whether or not they're guilty or not guilty. I know, and like I said, it was held in ecclesiastical courts through their church. So they already knew what you were. Had nothing to do with, them debasing you and them criminalizing you. And so as to justify your enslavement, your enslavement was because they know they had to arrest your development. And in order to arrest your development, they had to control the information, because they knew gradually you were coming to your own. You can't hold the people down forever. They knew that. But they knew before you were coming to your own, everything that you knew would be by virtue of what I taught you. Okay? So these are just the states that they say, or the countries that they say where bestiality is becoming a problem. Okay, Denmark, Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, Britain. Okay, now you have in the 10 states where it's legal, and I said I'm pretty sure I probably went over this information, but I have to do it again because sometimes I miss a lot of my points that I'm trying to bring out because I got my son with me, but they're crucial for your understanding of exactly what you're dealing with. So Ohio, Nevada, Kentucky, Hawaii, New Mexico, Texas, Vermont, West Virginia, Wyoming, and the most famous of all, District of Columbia. All right, your capital is where bestiality is legal. Okay, that's what you need to know. So this is important to understanding these things and to understanding the individuals who rule this planet. Now, as I already brought out to you, how we have to get a clearer understanding of who rules us or who rules this society. We have to discard, or we have to make sure we can point out individuals who only keep us at the surface level of understanding. And that is your Dr. Wesley Muhammad's. That is your Dr. Umar Johnson's. That is your, pick them out. That's your pharaohs, young pharaohs, all of them. Now these people doing, what are they doing now? Celebrity gossip? This issue that watered down now where we doing celebrity gossip? Come on, man. This is, the time is of the essence, dude. And we have to understand that everything that they have constructed has been about genetic survival. And you must know that. You must know that. You know, and we don't know it, you know, we don't want to take it into consideration because we don't want to see the challenge that is presented to us. This will require a revolution. This is not a patchwork operation. You can't do a little here and do a little there. The only time you can incorporate that philosophy, a little here and a little there, is in terms of leaps and bounds. You can do leaps and bounds, a little here and a little there. But you must be doing leaps and bounds in terms of your progression, in terms of your maturation spiritually, physically, and mentally. And that is by knowing what you are. A carbon-based being, a being that, you know, uses light energy more so than it desires to use any other energy. You know, we don't have to go off into understanding that even when we take in that carbon from the carbohydrates, mind you, like we talked about in that first lecture, which you had the pleasure of knowing, your carbohydrates or your sugars are nothing more than carbon being broken down. And when the oxygen hits the oxygen splits it into, you know, carbon, hydrogen, and water. Okay. And, you know, and then, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, and water. Carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And so from that, just from taking in sugar, you turn that sugar to a gas, or that solid to a gas, as it undergoes that chemical reaction. You know, so that's incredible to know. And we know that, like we talked about, all these other sugars are the manipulation of carbon. If you're a carbon-based being and your carbon-based self has an affinity for sugar because it's carbon building on top of carbon, those are the building, carbon is the building blocks. That's why they call it the king of elements in the periodic table. And that's what you're made out of. So if carbon is the building blocks, and that's why it desires the carbohydrates, because it's building on top of itself. It can rearrange itself, put itself. There's an infinite number of possibilities when it comes to this godlike element or godlike particle, which you are made up of. So it's important, if we understand that, you know, a lot of the endings or the time that they describe humanity to be in jeopardy or the end times, it's always with radiation. Now, mind you, what we've established with radiation is heat. Mind you, you're a radioactive being. Go listen to the first and second lecture if you haven't had an opportunity to, and we prove that without a shadow of a doubt through kinetic science. Also substantiate or also giving it credibility or validity, if you need that, from European authority. We've done that. Okay? So, you know, like I said, what you need to know is the makeup. The psychological makeup, not so much as we're not even going to prove, or we're going to prove, and you know, like you have a lot of those people go, oh, why do you come from dogs, okay? I don't care. Even if the data is out there, even if we know they got 2 to 3% Neanderthal DNA, or even if we know they mix with cat, that isn't even not my argument. My argument is look at the evidence. Look at what's documented, and you draw the conclusion. You know, even though you may seem that it's simple, mind you, they operate in, you know, by conveying it to you in symbols. This is what you need to understand. So, you know, like, you know, most people just, they get caught up in the storms, man, because like I said, it's so hard to put a lot of time and energy and a lot of emphasis into acquiring the information, then dissecting the information, and then, you know, actually using the information. So those 3 steps are so hard to come by, and especially those 3 steps are so hard to operate at the same time. Usually, you know, you go through 1 or 2 stages, or 1 stage at a time. You spend your life acquiring the information, then you might spend the latter half of your life dissecting the information, and then at the end of your life, you finally realize how to use the information. That's why you have this idiomatic expression in your head, oh, if I knew now what I, if I knew then what I know now. That's why that hurts people so much, is because of the levels of progression, but you don't have to go through that. Just look at it and then honestly, you know, evaluate it for what, you know, and like I said, that's why it sounds so crazy what this deranged person Muhammad was talking about, because it's like most of the black people that I know and me myself have made dietary changes or lifestyle changes because I've had a reaction to the food. I didn't have to go to a doctor. I listened to my body. I knew when it was indigestion, or, you know, the potential to develop osteoporosis or diabetes. I'm not going to take it that far. I knew when I abstained from milk products, I felt fine. Idiot. So this is where, like we talked about, what they also peddle subliminally or underneath is this notion that you don't have the intelligence to make your own decisions. You don't have the intelligence to listen to your body. You don't have the intelligence to develop the willpower to make changes to your body. We have to understand capitalism is based off of ignorance. Because you don't know how to do something is where they make money. Because you're not an electrician, I come over and I charge you $1,000. Because you're not a plumber, I'll come over and charge you $1,000. In many areas, especially our bodies, that's where I get, I knew it myself. I'm making changes myself. This is not something where I can do with ease. Nobody does this with ease. I guarantee you 9 out of 10 people who become health conscious is because something went wrong. It wasn't because stuff was going right. If you could have ate Snickers and Ho-Hos and drumsticks all your life, trust me, you would have kept doing it. Something goes wrong, man. And that's what we have to appreciate. And then, us denying our body the opportunity, being the greatest mathematician of all, just like I told people, you may be an idiot when it comes to numbers. Oh, I don't know, 10 times 12, I don't know what that is. But the body keeps track of trillions of cells. Every day, every hour, on the hour. So for them to reduce this body, this magnificent creation, to one in which is just animated by a spirit. No, it's a beast itself. Yeah, it may be animated by the spirit, but we know that it is magnificent. Because if I chop an arm off and the doctor put an arm on me, he's touted as a magician. Oh, it was a miracle. Why ain't it a miracle when it's already on me? Why do you have to create a synthetic version of it for it to now be great? That's what you have to know. Mind you, remember we talked about in the first lecture, the power is in their discovery. They have been able to actually breathe life into an enigma, to gain more importance or attach importance to something just because they have been attached to it, or they have some connection to it and bringing it to you, I guess. So the idea that just because I brought it to you makes this more important than what it is before I even came into contact with it. That's how they can ignore, the accomplishments of others. That's how they can ignore the culture of others. Because until I mastered electricity, when you niggas was doing it, it wasn't really nothing. Until I came to this country, you wasn't really doing nothing until I gave you, I transferred what I knew about life into you and infused it into you. Because up until then, like they stated, you were animals. Because your body, which your skin becomes, solar panels for the sun. This is why you were dressing the way you were dressing. Or this is the reason why you had the attire that you had. Okay, these are the reasons why you had the customs that you had, because it was, as a byproduct of being a solar being. By virtue of you being a solar being, this was the only way that you knew how to articulate your behavior. All right. So, my thing is I just wanted to rant about that because I get tired of them. When we coming for their heads, we chopping off heads in 2020. I ain't playing with you. I got, man, my son Zion, he lit a fire under me, dude. Because I just can't say enough about how we must, do as much as we possibly can to connect with individuals who are extremely serious about their position, that they have to take within the conscious community, and enlightening other brothers and sisters so that they can shed the shackles of oppression, mentally, physically, and emotionally and spiritually, so that they can grab what is truly theirs, which is their God-given right to rule themselves inside. Because if you think about it, that's literally the only thing you actually have control over. That's why when you you engage in those futile attempts to control things outside of you, how frustrating is that? Trying to control other people, control circumstances outside you, hoping that your football team kick that field goal. Come on, man, get out of here with that. Put more emphasis and energy on controlling the organs inside you. So in the event that one of them go wrong, you know how to keep it in check or put it in check. Probably just by saying something to it. This disconnect that we have with ourselves, man, is like it's a chasm between self or consciousness and the subconscious, or whatever levels that they want to apply to the human ego. But all I see is really one. you know, the and that distinction is clearly made by us endorsing, you know, the principles that they or the concepts that they push out in the Matrix. So, you know, like I said, I'm gonna have more information. I just wanted to kind of rant a little bit, get y'all to understand and know who Heru Heinous was. That I love that y'all had an opportunity to subscribe to the channel, and I hope that y'all, you know, come along with me on this journey, because I'm telling you, your boy gonna be on fire. That's just, you know, I just got upset when I saw that. I'm like, what is this nigga talking about? You know what I mean? So yeah, it's gonna be a little bit more than that. You know, and I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest. So I want to let y'all know 2020 I'm gonna be going harder than ever, because 2020 about vision. You know, we ain't got time to have hindsight vision. We need, you know, that let's do it now and get it done vision. We be able to see it as we move. And that's what I'm trying to incorporate in my theme, and facts over feelings. And how you do that is you take the emotion out of it. That's how you're able to see it clearly. The next video I'm gonna post in a minute, I'll tell you about my personal experience with taking my son to the hospital and how they made a big deal about him not being vaccinated. Yeah, it was a trip. I had to, you know, but that whole with his whole him being here is, if I tell y'all that story, y'all gonna be like, what, dude? It's, you know, this is why I say, man, you know, that's why it's paramount that, or it is, you know, imperative that you understand that you have a voice in all of this. And you know, you may not be able to control too much outside of you in that sense, but you definitely have to control what's inside of your control. And that's you. Let's get it.